Next on Unsolved Mysteries. When a teenager dies of carbon monoxide poisoning, police call it suicide. But his parents say that he was murdered. Robert Fisher seemed to be a devoted husband and father. Could he have killed his own family? Agatha Christie, the best-selling crime writer of all time, became her own real-life mystery when she vanished without a trace. And at the height of World War II, a few American and Nazi soldiers put down their guns to share Christmas dinner. Where are they now?
There is just nothing like a good mystery, and they're even better when they're true. I'm Dennis Farina. Join me, won't you?
Madison, Wisconsin.
It's perfect for what you're looking for.
19-year-old Chad Maurer worked in a bike shop. A popular student and well-rounded athlete, Chad hoped to save up enough money to move to Colorado for college and snowboarding.
Oh, great.
One afternoon, Chad returned home to grab a quick lunch before returning to work.
You know, it's packed over there, so I gotta get going. See ya.
Okay, see
Everything
you, Chad.
seemed normal that day, including Chad's request for gas money.
Dad, can I borrow some money for gas? Be right out. Okay, thanks.
There was nothing about him that was different. I mean, he wasn't on edge.
Dad, you want me to get a jacket to take with you?
No, that's all right, thanks. Bye-bye.
You know, he was just so excited about the job. And he had a big smile on his face, as usual.
Hold it out to 20, Chad, okay? Filled up, have a good day, okay? Catch you later. Bye. I'm standing right outside, saying goodbye to him and have a good one, you know. I didn't notice anything different either about anything in the car, you know. It was kind of cool out that day and stuff, and I just don't think he had any intention of going anywhere, or else he would have had a jacket with him.
But Chad didn't go to work. He ended up 150 miles away on the south side of Chicago, one of the roughest neighborhoods in the country. That's where a maintenance worker found Chad's abandoned car in the garage of a housing complex.
Oh, God.
Inside the car, Chad lay dead, apparently from carbon monoxide poisoning. The Chicago police contacted the Maurers with the tragic news that their son had committed suicide.
My system went into shock. My brain went into shock. Chad had too much going for him. Chad had all his friends, and Chad loved life. Chad was not depressed. Chad was not down. He had all these goals.
For parents, the death of a child under any circumstance is traumatic and nearly impossible to believe. But as John and Dolly learned more about how their son Chad died, they found themselves drawn even deeper into a horrifying mystery.
The Chicago police had said there was no evidence of foul play, yet the knuckles on both of Chad's hands had been skinned to the bone, and there were bruises on his face.
Yes, would you like to see it?
Most
The
definitely.
Maurers asked to see Chad's old clothes and found them stained with blood.
What I show you is the crime scene photographs that were sent
John
up
and Dolly
on
began to fear that their son had been murdered. They went to review the police photos of their son's body with Detective David Bongiovanni.
Speaking of item, what the heck is that next to him there?
The jacket.
Chad didn't take a jacket with him, and he didn't own a jacket like that.
And you're positive of that?
Yes, I'm positive.
The parents noted the jacket on the front seat was not a jacket they knew Chad owned. It would be interesting to know the size of the jacket, if it's consistent with Chad's size, or it may give us an idea of the basic build of somebody that may have been in the car with him.
The jacket was another clue, pointing to the involvement of an unknown person in Chad's death. The autopsy report also suggested that Chad had not taken his own life. The level of carbon monoxide in his body was 74%, much higher than usually found in a suicide. While the findings proved that Chad had died of carbon monoxide poisoning, the extremely high levels suggested that he had been put in the car while unconscious, rather than getting into the car under his own power.
It's my understanding that levels where they're conscious at the time they succumb to carbon monoxide is about 50 to 60%. Levels that get up to about 74 to 80% are more consistent with a person being unconscious or sleeping at the time they succumb to carbon monoxide poisoning. And that's because people naturally have a tendency to breathe deeper and more methodically when they're sleeping than possibly when they're awake.
The cause of Chad's death was changed from suicide to undetermined. Authorities began a full-blown investigation.
Do you have an opinion as to what
The
happened?
bike shop owner was quoted in a local newspaper saying that he thought that Chad had been afraid.
Something or someone spooked him.
Soon after the article appeared, the shop was vandalized. No other stores in the area were hit. It appeared that someone was sending a message. Chad's story was aired on a local Crime Stoppers program in Madison. After the broadcast, a caller left a disturbing tip alleging that Chad was involved in a drug deal with people who lived in his apartment complex. These same people had previously lived on the south side of Chicago.
We know through our intelligence sources that there is a pipeline of narcotics trafficking from Chicago to Madison. Now, there's nothing in Chad's background that would really suggest that he's involved with narcotics. But because of this conduit, there's a possibility that he might have been tricked to be involved in narcotics and narcotics trafficking.
Is it possible that somebody else offered him money? Chad was looking for money, he wanted to move to Colorado. Is it possible that somebody offered him $500 to make the trip, and then when they got to Chicago, reneged on that, and an altercation occurred, and Chad obviously being the loser of that altercation?
Most all of our homicides in Chicago have a common denominator of drugs in it somewhere, whether they're selling it, whether they're fighting over the territory, whether they're using it. Drugs seems to come up in a great majority of our cases. So this is also a reason that we're inclined to lean toward this drug angle a little bit more, because we see it so often here. We feel that there are people probably in the Madison area that probably know more than they're coming forward with. And I think probably that's who we're trying to reach out to now, because we're not going to know what happened inside that garage unless we know the circumstances surrounding how he got there.
All we know in Chad's case is Chad is dead and he ended up in Chicago. That's all we know in this case. And we know he was beaten up. But why was he beaten up? How did he end up in Chicago? There are so many questions, and every day we wake up and we think a different thing that could have happened to Chad. I know it won't bring Chad back, but we cannot rest, and we cannot put Chad to rest until we really have the answers to this case.
If you have any information about the death of Chad Mauer, please log on to our website at unsolved.com. Coming up, his job was fighting fires, but police believe that he set a fire to cover up a cold-blooded murder. Scottsdale, Arizona. A powerful explosion rocks a quiet residential neighborhood.
It's a big fire. What? It's a really big fire behind. It just like blew up.
Okay, what's on fire?
The whole house.
The whole house?
The whole house is burning up.
The force of the blast has ripped through the roof of the house, causing it to burst into flames. Most of the home is destroyed before firefighters can contain the blaze. The home is owned by Robert and Mary Fisher, who live here with their 2 children, 13-year-old Brittany and 10-year-old Bobby Jr. When rescuers are finally able to get inside the house, they find the remains of Mary and the 2 children still in their beds. They appear to have died in their sleep. Robert is nowhere to be found. Autopsies of the victims produced a stunning revelation. All 3 had been stabbed to death. Could Robert, a seemingly dedicated family man, have killed his own wife and his own children?
Robert was a very private person. Outwardly, he's perceived as a good father, good husband, church-going man. During the investigation, we found that Robert Fisher had a number of faces, a number of masks that he wore.
Most people took Robert Fisher at face value.
My brother loved his kids and his wife. A year ago, there's no way I would have imagined any of this. I trusted my brother with my life. There's no way I would have thought he would be capable of this.
These kids are grown.
Robert and Mary had met in high school, and they'd been married for 16 years.
See you. Yeah, I want you to come back too.
Robert had served as a firefighter until a back injury ended his career. Investigators learned that there had been tension between Robert and Mary following the injury. One day, Robert came to Mary with upsetting news.
Let me talk. Remember the massage therapist that I was going to because of my back? Honey, I ended up having an affair with her.
Mary was shattered.
I can't believe you. I want you out. I want you out. Just leave. Just leave.
Fisher headed north to the forests where he usually went to hunt. When he returned a few days later, he and Mary decided to go to counseling at their church.
We need to address the personal issues.
Robert had apparently suffered deep emotional scars after the divorce of his own parents, and he was determined that his children would not experience the same emotional pain.
So let's talk. Go back and examine.
Robert had told my dad many times that divorce was not an option. He would not be divorced like his parents were. He did state that several times, Robert did.
But Mary may not have shared those feelings.
We spoke with a very close friend of Mary's and learned that she had confided in her that she was thinking about divorcing Robert.
Done this again. I just can't believe it after all the work.
Neighbors told investigators that on the night of the murders, the Fishers had a loud argument.
I'm calling the lawyer tomorrow.
I don't think that he planned this on this particular day. This is what I'm going to do. I think that it precipitated over a long period of time, and there was that one thing that triggered it. And that could have been the argument.
Could Robert Fisher have murdered his wife and children rather than put them through the heartache of divorce? The crime scene investigation uncovered intriguing clues. A disconnected natural gas line, an out-of-place candlestick holder, and the residue of some form of highly flammable liquid. Detectives began to piece together a chilling scenario of what happened on the night of the murders.
There was some type of a lacerated trauma to all 3 victims' necks, which could not have occurred during the fire.
Investigators theorized that several hours before the explosion, Robert Fisher slashed the throats of each of his children and then his wife. In addition to having her throat cut, evidence showed that Mary was also shot.
Fire from a gas explosion usually isn't as intense as the fire at the Fisher residence, so there was some type of other flammable material used.
Investigators believe that after spreading gasoline around the house, Fisher disconnected the line leading to the gas furnace.
As a source of ignition, we believe that a candle with a candle holder was used as a timing device in order to allow Robert time to leave the residence.
Hours later, once the gas had built up, the candle then triggered the explosion that ignited the fire.
Robert committed the arson in order to cover up the murders, believing that the bodies would be burned beyond recognition and would have covered up any sign of what had happened. But it didn't cover it up quite as well as expected.
Cut.
A full-scale manhunt for Fisher turned up few leads. And then, 10 days later, Mary's SUV, which disappeared on the night of the murders, was spotted by a hiker. It had been abandoned near Fisher's favorite hunting area.
It was clean. There was no dust on it. It was underneath pine trees, and there was very little pine tree needles on top of the vehicle or in the vehicle, which indicated to us that it had probably been dumped there within 24 hours of discovery.
Investigators hurried to the remote area, but the landscape was riddled with hundreds of caves, and days of searching produced nothing. Two theories emerged. One, that a despondent Robert Fisher took refuge in one of the caves where he eventually committed suicide. The other theory suggests that a cunning Fisher left the SUV behind to divert the attention of investigators and then vanished.
Where would he be? How could he have gone to where he would be? He didn't take any money with him. And he would be in so much physical pain from his back. I don't know if he did this, I don't know how he could be alive, knowing how much my brother loved his family.
However, Detective John Kirkham believes that Fisher is still alive.
The vehicle itself was about a quarter of a mile off of a improved Forest Service road. It's a fairly active area with a lot of traffic on that road. And there are various places that one could use a phone, catch a ride, that sort of thing. He has now probably started a new life under an assumed identity.
If Robert wanted to kill himself, he would have done it when he killed Mary, Brittany, and Bobby, is what my belief. So I do believe Robert is alive, yes.
Robert Fisher has been indicted for the murders of his wife and children. He is 6 feet tall and weighs 190 pounds. He has surgical scars on his lower back and a gold crown on his upper left canine tooth. Fisher is on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, and there is a reward of up to $100,000 for information leading to his arrest. Next, famous crime writer Agatha Christie becomes the focus of her own intriguing, unsolved mystery.
Agatha Christie is the best-selling writer of all time. Over 2 billion of her mystery novels have been sold. However, at the age of 36, Agatha herself suddenly disappeared and became the central character in a real-life crime investigation that mystified her family and the police.
Newlands Corner, England. On a chilly December morning, Agatha Christie's car was found abandoned about an hour's drive from her home. It appeared that she had vanished into thin air. Some suspected the worst, that her husband, Archie, had done her in.
The press was fascinated, so was the public. Agatha was a famous woman. She was known to be a mistress of mysteries. This was a real-life mystery.
The story caused a sensation. How could one of the best-known women in England simply disappear? She was born Agatha Miller in 1890 and raised in the wealthy upper middle class of English society. When Agatha was 24, she married Colonel Archibald Christie, a handsome pilot in the Royal Flying Corps.
Everybody tells them it's a bad idea. It's the war. They get married on Christmas Day. And he immediately goes off to the war. A very, very traditional and romantic tale.
While Archie was fighting in France, Agatha launched her writing career, creating the famous Belgian detective H. Hercule Poirot.
That first book was a sensation. She didn't expect anything like that. And nobody expected it from a rather plump, placid, ordinary-looking girl. She hit the jackpot straight away.
The next 3 or 4 books did a little better each time. And then with her 5th book, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, she really hits the big time.
In 1926, 12 years into their marriage, Agatha, Archie, and their young daughter Rosalind moved into a mansion. They called it Styles, after Agatha's first novel. Archie was now a successful investment banker. On the surface, everything looked perfect.
Hadn't given it a thought.
Archie was a real stockbroker. He was a British, proper, upper crust, boring man who looked good. He was extremely conventional.
I'm playing golf at the weekend. Care to join me?
I don't believe I can.
As you will.
Agatha looked conventional, but inside she wasn't. Inside, she wanted more.
But more would have to wait. Soon after Agatha moved into her mansion, her mother, Clara, died. Agatha fell apart.
Agatha was absolutely distraught for the death of her mother. I think she had really never left the mother's side, and this is possibly one of the reasons why the marriage wasn't a great success, that she still remained very much a family girl. And when the mother died, it really unhinged her a bit.
She took Rosalind to the home where Agatha had grown up to sort through her mother's things. Though the move was temporary, it dragged on, and Archie stayed away.
At 36, I think most women would mourn their mothers. But with Agatha Christie, it wasn't just sorrow. It was something approaching melancholia. It was an almost pathological condition, I think. And so she lived at Ashfield in this terrible sense of disorientation, physical stress, with no one to confide in, looking forward to the point when Archie would come down and celebrate with her their daughter's birthday.
Agatha, please do sit down.
Yes, Archie.
When Archie did finally come to visit, he brought bad news.
Agatha, I want you to give me a divorce.
A divorce?
That's what I want.
No, Archie. Absolutely not. Never.
That's what I want, Agatha. I will not be moved.
Archie had become involved with a woman named Nancy Neal.
Well, this was absolutely devastation for her. She had been betrayed. She never thought that a man could do this to her. I think she would have even lived with Archie having a mistress. But the fact that he wanted to divorce her destroyed her.
In a last-ditch effort to save her marriage, Agatha took Rosalind and moved back home.
I think you should stay at Styles this weekend, Archie. We could spend some time alone together.
Excuse me.
Archie took off alone, saying that he was going to a weekend house party, most likely a rendezvous with his mistress. And Agatha was left alone again.
Either at 9:30 at night or around 11 o'clock at night, according to different reports, she left the house in something of a state. The maids were alarmed by the way she went out. We know that she took with her a small traveling case and that she wore her fur coat.
Agatha left a note to her secretary asking that all her weekend appointments be canceled. Another note of unknown content was addressed to Archie.
Superintendent. Morning. Show me what you got, Constable.
The next morning, Agatha's abandoned car was found just an hour's drive from Styles.
It had gone off the side of the road. It was not turned over. There had been no big accident.
That coat's still in the car, sir.
Cold night to be out without a coat.
Very cold indeed, sir. What's this? No luggage, sir. One small bag. 3 dresses, 2 pairs of shoes, and this, sir.
Very nice, thank you, Constable.
Archie Christie had been tracked down at his house party. He had the unfortunate timing to meet with authorities just as they were beginning to suspect foul play. Next, Archie Christie has some explaining to do. Mystery writer Agatha Christie had disappeared. Her car was found abandoned, but there were no clues to her whereabouts. By the time her husband Archie arrived on the scene, he was a prime suspect.
Superintendent.
Oh, Christie?
Who are all these people?
Oh, just the curious.
Well, they've got to be here. Too late to stop them now, sir. They know the gist of it already.
Colonel Christie, have you any idea where your wife might be?
No, sir. None. I haven't a clue.
Pardon me for asking, but, where were you last night?
I was away. At friends.
You were?
Yes, Superintendent, I was.
The police launched vigorous attempts to find a body. There is a small pool nearby called Silent Pool, which Agatha had in fact used in one of her previous stories. And this is dragged, I think, at least twice. They enrolled the public and I think even parts of the army in kind of beating the bushes, quite literally. Meanwhile, the press is trying to investigate every angle on the case. They very rapidly get onto the Nancy Neal angle. And the plot they start to evolve is, in fact, a murder plot, possibly a suicide plot. She has been driven to suicide by the cruelty of her husband and his infidelity. Or, even more interesting, she is refusing to divorce him, and so he decides to make away with her. And the fact that so many of the elements in the situation mirror Agatha Christie's own published fiction makes the whole thing so much more fascinating.
Gradually, eyewitnesses came forward to describe encounters that they had had with Agatha before she disappeared. The first was Ernest Cross, who was walking to work on the morning of Agatha's disappearance.
What are you doing here?
I'm walking to work, Mom.
Cross said that Agatha seemed upset. She wore only a thin dress despite the cold weather.
Can I help you then?
Will you? Oh, please.
Certainly.
Very good. Very good. I'll just get in.
All right, then.
Ernest Cross said Agatha drove off in the opposite direction from Newlands Corner, the village where her car would later be found. 2 railroad porters spoke with Agatha outside the station and thought that she had boarded a train.
Thank you.
Nearly 2 weeks after Agatha Christie had been reported missing, she was seen at a very elegant spa 200 miles from her home. Agatha was registered under the last name of Neal, the same name as Archie's mistress.
The chief inspector wasted no time bringing Archie up to the spa.
So she'll have to pass through here.
Agatha.
Archie. Dear brother, you come to take me home.
Brother?
Archie, it's so good to see you.
For reasons known only to herself, Agatha at first identified Archie as her brother, not her husband.
You were dead.
Is this your wife, Colonel?
Yes, it is.
Mrs. Christie.
Hello.
Agatha, please, we must talk. Come with me.
What I would like to know is what happened when Archie and she went upstairs that night. And they sat in that room all night talking. I mean, did they give each other hell or what? And did he say, well, I have no intention of ever coming back to you? I think he must have, because that was the end. That was the tragic moment that night.
Is there another money boat?
No one knows what was said in that room. After the conversation, Agatha and Archie quickly left. They would never make a comment about Agatha's mysterious disappearance. The press concluded that Agatha had suffered from amnesia. But experts today still don't agree on what happened.
I believe that Christy had a definitive and terrible fight with her husband. It drove her over the edge. She had been depressed. Now she becomes, on some level, psychotic. She is not herself. She takes on another identity. She wanders off. She gets on the train. She takes another name. She goes into this hotel, and she lives another life. That's very, very, very rare, but it's known, it's documented in the annals of psychology. And we know that Agatha Christie was an unusual woman.
I think she plotted and planned it from the start. It was, she went to the only thing she knew. She went and used the media that she knew, which was revenge, mystery, possibility of murder. She checked into this hotel under the name, I think it's just madly funny, she checked in using the name of the girlfriend, Neil.
Table for one for Teresa Neil.
I think she took endless delight in the fact that the police shadowed Archie. Poor Archie had a hell of a life. He couldn't go anywhere because they suspected him of murdering her. And I think she took marvelous delight in reading this in the papers. Again, I think, in a sort of revenge and twisted up sort of way she was thinking. But it was very funny.
After that, Archie and Agatha soon went their separate ways. Agatha married archaeologist Max Mallowan in 1930, 2 years after Archie had wed Nancy Neal. By all accounts, both couples had long, happy marriages. Next, the story of enemy soldiers who became friends on one remarkable Christmas Eve. The Ardennes Forest in Belgium. It was here, near the end of World War II, that Germany launched its last great offensive. Known as the Battle of the Bulge, it resulted in more American casualties than any other battle in the war. Very close to the fighting stood a small, isolated cabin. There, Fritz Wencken, a 12-year-old German boy, lived with his mother, Elizabeth. Fritz's father, Hubert, worked as a civilian baker for the German army 20 miles away. On their own, Fritz and his mother struggled to put food on the table.
My father thought, like everybody else, that the war would be over by Christmas, but it was not to be. And our stay in this shack was longer than we anticipated.
Christmas Eve arrived filled with sadness and uncertainty. Hubert had still not returned, and his family was resigned to spending the holiday without him. Fritz's mother tried to make the evening as festive as possible. She scraped together a Christmas meal of a few potatoes and a scrawny rooster.
Papa?
She opened the door, and there were these soldiers.
Good evening, ma'am. Do you speak English?
Nein.
We're Americans.
They tried to talk to us, but my mother didn't speak English.
Our friend's been shot. Can we come inside for a while, please?
My mother just looked, and she looked at the guy sitting in the snow.
Kommt rein.
Thank you.
Until finally my mother, after, that seems to be like an eternity to me, she asked them to come in.
Hier aufs Bett.
Fritz's mother knew the harboring of the enemy was punishable by death. But on this night, she was willing to take that risk.
Ask her if she speaks French. Parlez-vous français?
Mais oui. Vous êtes séparés de votre armée?
Oui, madame.
He said that they had lost their units and were wandering through the Ardennes for the past 2 days and 2 nights.
She's gonna change his bandage.
Fritz, hol doch bitte mal das Tuch, dann reiß ich...
My mother was all motherhood. She worried for them, and she worried for the wounded man, and she did everything she could. They were very nice, like big boys from the neighborhood, you know. We thought automatically this must be more Americans. And I went to the door and opened the door. And there were 4 German soldiers.
Fröhliche Weihnachten.
I was petrified with fear.
Aber wir wurden von unserem Regiment getrennt und haben uns verlaufen.
He said, we have lost our units and we would like to warm up a little bit.
Sie können auch mit uns zu Abend
So
essen.
my mother said, you not only
Gerne.
be allowed to warm up, but you get a nice dinner if you accept our guests.
Das für Gäste Amerikaner etwa?
Ja.
And my mother said, this is Christmas night and there will be no shooting around here.
Legt eure Waffen da ab
Put your arms in the wooden shed
und dann kommt rein.
and then we come outside and have a nice Christmas.
Das Essen ist schon fast fertig.
Meanwhile, my mother had turned to the Americans, who by then had noticed that some Germans were coming, and had turned to their guns also.
Pas avoir peur. Je vais les garder jusqu'à demain. Merci. Fritz, so, jetzt gehst du noch ein paar Kartoffeln holen.
My mother said to me, get more potatoes and more water.
Die sind alle
We
hungrig.
had more mouths to feed.
Setzen Sie sich doch bitte.
Your comrade. He's wounded?
Yeah. He got a round in the thigh earlier.
One of the German soldiers went over to the American that were wounded and asked the Americans in English what was wrong with him.
So what do you think? He's lucky. He's lost a lot of blood, but the cold has prevented the wound from getting infected.
He had some first aid kit and he applied a dressing to the wound. And the whole evening he would every now and then go and look after him.
That night, hostilities ceased in at least one corner of the forest as American and German soldiers sat down together to honor the Christmas season.
My mother said grace.
Lieber Herrgott, wir danken dir,
It was not a regular prayer, it was something spontaneous.
miteinander zusammenkommen hast lassen.
And she said that let's all thank the Lord for being together tonight, peaceful in this terrible war, and let's promise to be friendly to each other forever if possible. Let's also pray for an end of this terrible war so that we all can go home very soon. And by that time they were all crying. But from then on, there was a feeling of friendship that permeated the whole room. It was wonderful. I never forget it.
Sie gehen hier am Bach entlang.
The next morning, the German soldiers helped construct a makeshift stretcher for the injured GI and then gave the Americans directions back to their lines.
Continue till you come to the railroad tracks.
That same day, Fritz and his mother left with the Germans and were soon reunited with Fritz's father. The war continued for another 5 months. In the early 1960s, Fritz immigrated to the United States. He became an American citizen and settled in Hawaii. Like his father before him, Fritz became a baker. But that special night in 1944 remains the defining moment of Fritz's life. He always held out hope that he would find the American GIs who helped him learn the true meaning of Christmas.
It showed me what my mother could do, and it showed me what one single human being can do to avoid bloodshed and to bring peace. And it also showed me at a very early age that we're all alike.
Update.
After our broadcast, a man named Eldridge Ward called us here at Unsolved Mysteries. Ward was a volunteer chaplain at a nursing home in Maryland. He recognized the story as one often told by a resident named Ralph Blank.
When Fritz learned that one of the soldiers was still alive but in fragile health, he hurried to meet him.
It's hard.
Fritz, that was 50 years ago, boy.
It's hard.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to see you.
I just had to look at his eyes, and I knew this is him. And he recognized me, apparently, even though we changed so much in that time. But it was a great experience.
And I changed any? I never thought I'd ever see Fritz again when I left Germany. Today is a special day for me.
I can only tell you it was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream, something I had given up all hope to experience.
More than a half a century later, they compared memories of that Christmas day.
You had a gun, and Jim had a rifle.
I had a pistol, you remember?
Yeah.
I gave it to your mother.
That's right, or she took it from you.
She still got my pistol.